joining me for Coffee with the Editor virtually. Today, I am joined by the International Union of Railways, also known as UIC, or more commonly known as UIC. The local, not necessarily local team, but the team that definitely deals with the African region. And Christian, you were appointed in March as the director for the African region.
I've been appointed as Africa coordinator, but I'm always the race system director for UIC. That means the technical director. When we talk with UIC African members, systematically the questions are mainly for technical topics. And that's the reason why UIC has decided to nominate the technical responsible, the race system director, Africa coordinator, because it's useful for UIC members and it's more efficient for UIC to have both in the same hands. It's very important for UIC to work with Africa for many reasons. First, African members are members in UIC for many years. Railways will become more and more important in Africa. It will be a key factor for development of Africa. And we think that UIC could have an added value for UIC members and for the railway stakeholders in Africa.
Let's just summarize what UIC is and does, and then bring it down to all the regions that you cover, and then we can really focus on the African region.
UIC had its centenary last year, so it's an old lady. And initially, UIC worked and provided international documents, technical documents for railway companies. And it's already important. But during the last 4 years, we have decided to focus UIC on its added values, notably on safety, interoperability, telecommunications, passengers, freight, combined transport, labeling. For instance, UIC is drafting the FMCS specifications for the 5G rail specifications, and we have a very, very close coordination with the International Standardization Organization. And another added value of UIC dissemination, we have capabilities to disseminate best practice and so on. For instance, we are working on how to manage and how to save energy. We have created a task force in UIC with more than 60 UIC members around the same table, sharing the best practice. And it's very efficient. And because we have focused our work on how added values, we think that we could be more efficient for our members. And the umbrella of everything, UIC wants to allow, to enable a model shift from aviation and road to railways. Why? Because the railways are the more efficient modes of transport regarding emissions, and it's easier to save emission, to reduce emissions if you have a modal shift. And in Africa, it's in other continents as well, but in Africa, it's very important to increase the public transport, and railway could be the backbone of public transport. In this regard, we work closely with UITP, the equivalent of UIC for public transport, tramway, metros, buses, because it's very important to coordinate for public transport everything, tramways, metros, buses, and railways. And for freight, it's very important too. It will be not possible to develop countries, cities, continents only with road. So we think we have this opportunity, we have a momentum during these years to advocate for railways for the best benefit of states, of countries, of railway stakeholders and for the planet. That's it. Every department in UIC, every department, notably the system department, but every department, we work for reducing emissions.
If we had to take obviously the European environments and then compare it to the African environment. So the continent of Africa, we are in various stages of development in terms of our railway strategy, even outside the focus on sustainable mobility and of course the carbon emissions and being net zero by, I think, 2050 or whenever it is. But just about every country in Africa is very much at a different stage in terms of their development of their railway infrastructure and the technology around that. When one compares that to Europe, fundamentally, what do you see as the differences? Especially when it comes to, that integration through Africa and the ability to move around the continent in a harmonized way.
We think that we need regional approaches. If we want to tell, we have practice in Europe and we will take this practice in other continents, or we have practice in Asia and we will take these practices in Europe or in Africa. We think it's not the right way to do. The right way to do is to, we need a regional approach. So Africa needs an African approach. Europe needs a European approach, but the added value of UIC is to be able to compare, to allow people from every continent to compare that practice and to talk together. But after that, we need to have the right approach for each part of the world. And when we talk about Africa, we have different Africas. For instance, when we talk about Europe, we talk about interoperability. We have a convergence of technology, of standards, of specifications, and thanks to that, it's possible to run cross-border trains from everywhere in Europe to everywhere in Europe. Okay, it's not the case in Africa, and it's a very long-term vision, but we need to have of course, a very long-term vision, but we need to have a very short-term approach. And we need to have this approach with the long-term vision. And so interoperability, of course, it's important, but it's not, if interoperability blocks everything, it's the wrong approach. So we want to be pragmatic, and we want to help our members, and we want to help the railway sector in Africa with an African approach from the African needs and with the expertise of African experts. And after, of course, if we see that we need to compare approaches, why not? For instance, metric gauges, very important in Africa. We are able to create contact between Asia and Africa, because in Asia there are a lot of metric gauges. And if we explain that the standard gauges, European standard gauges will be the standard gauge for Africa, it's not realistic. We need to have a more pragmatic approach, and in UIC we are able to help for such pragmatic approach.
I think let's highlight some of the programs that you are running in Africa. And again, I use Africa in quite a broad context because traditionally I have seen UIC play quite a big role in Northern Africa. So like Morocco, Ethiopia, and like those countries. And I suppose the biggest reason for that is because there is an easy mechanism to go from Europe into Africa via the North African countries, and there's potential for that kind of development, certainly in respect of rail. But I think just give me an outline of all the programs that you have running in, maybe not all of them, but the top programs that you've got running in Africa. And then I think we need to highlight some of the more important roles in terms of, you know, becoming up to the Africa's high-speed integrated rail network, which there's going to be a conversation about at the end of May, and how UIC is going to be playing a role there.
When we talk about, maybe we could remember the conclusion of the high-speed Congress in Marrakesh by François Davenne. He explained that high speed is the right speed. So high speed is not systematically 320 kilometers per hour everywhere. And we have to adapt. Morocco was able to create the first high-speed train in Africa. It's a success. It's a technical success. It's a managerial success. It's a project management success. It's for the revenues, it's a success. So perfect. So it's possible to develop high-speed lines in Africa with African engineers. And there is the expertise in Africa. Of course, it's not the case everywhere. And we want to listen to railway stakeholders in Africa. We want to listen to them. And we don't have the solution, but we are able to help for the solutions. But the solutions will come. But everywhere, when you want to develop railways, you need political decisions. And the role of UIC is we are a technical body able to help. So the vision of UIC will be after decisions of the decision makers, then we will help. After we could give advice, we could help to solve technical problems. That my understanding, the African continent will have to decide by itself for its future, and probably with pragmatic solutions and with several steps. And we will accompany for a step. But what is the right and the best speed for a train in Africa? It depends on the needs, it depends on the political decisions, depending on the financing. And we are ready to, not only for Africa, but particularly for Africa, we are ready to help our members convincing banks to finance the development of railways. It's very important because of course, railways is the best way to reduce emissions, provided that we have railways, provided that we obtain finance for railways. It's a very key topic. We have a finance platform in UIC, and this finance platform will have the objective to prepare discussions between the railway stakeholders, with institutions able to finance railway development. For instance, the World Bank published in November last year the guideline explaining that they want to invest in railways. It was on the basis of the Vision 2030 of UIC. And my colleague Lucien Dutton, head of sustainability in UIC, was quoted in this report. So UIC was able to advocate and to help World Bank to have this technical report. And this technical report is a major step for the development of railways in Africa. But after, we are a technical body.
So as a technical body, I think it was last year you were running your Railway Thursdays, and some of that was impacted on the African region. Are you still doing those?
So I think to maybe summarize the main axis of Africa, of UIC program in Africa, I would divide them into three parts. So it's advocacy, one of the main axes. We have a number of collaborative partnerships in Africa with African Union, of course, with UNFCCC. So we participate in Africa Climate Week, in MENA Climate Week. This year, there's a MENA Climate Week in October in Saudi Arabia. Well, it's still in globes, Middle East, North Africa region. And there is one in Nairobi in September, I believe, for Africa Climate Week. And of course in COP, which is the main event of the year for UNFCCC activities. And so last year it was in Sharm el-Sheikh, and this year it's in Dubai. And we did launch a More Trains campaign where we call for all our members to join in for COP28 and for more trains to be presented there. We do have a number of other collaborative partnerships, of course, with the African Development Bank, with Islamic Bank of Development, World Bank, and UN Habitat, who are present in Kenya, and some other partners. UIC, another axis of activity is a platform. UIC is a platform to connect. So we organize African Railway Thursday webinars. We have trainings. We have in-person events. For example, so this year there was the biggest event, I think, was the High Speed Congress in Marrakesh. But we've just launched organization of a international symposium in Dakar, which will be in October. It's just been confirmed, so we haven't even started communication on that yet, but it's an investment symposium where we're planning to invite banks and speak about investment into railway infrastructure in Africa, notably. And well, of course, we organize trainings. And then UIC, of course, is a technical platform as well, as Christian has just mentioned, which is a base of UIC. So these are very brief, I would say, summary of main activities.
So I think one of the probably interesting things, in part of what UIC has been doing with Africa, so those Thursday webinars and things like that. Mm-hmm. You guys also did a book, where you released a publication on Africa. Are you going to be updating that book anytime soon?
Yes, in fact, well, not sure that it will be really a book. Well, we are really thinking how to do that, but what we will do is to update the African strategy. And as such, we will launch in the coming days a working group with the main CEO of UIC Africa, to have some kind of roadmap for the next, let's say, 4 years, in order to figure out where we should be. First, in terms of association life, I imagine that Christian has explained that we are a technical association, so we need to know what our African members have as priorities. So what do we need to look for, to implement, as the case may be, to have some development. Second, what kind of partnership we want to have within the region. For instance, we are trying to work more closely with the Commission for the African Union, and also the Development Bank, so that part of the strategy. And at the end of the day, how can UIC be, in a way, I don't know, included into this institutional landscape? For us, what is really important, and in a way, the European experience has been, to this extent, quite interesting. What we can see, but that's not only the case in Africa, that's things that you can see also partially in Asia and in some part of South America with the Mercosur, for instance. You have regional organizations that are trying to structure the international rail networks. And we do think that as UIC is in a way, I hope we are a trusted third party for all the technical development, we need to find our right place there. And that's a little bit where we will try to figure out, that will be the third perspective. This one is a little bit more long-term, how we can be there for helping our members to build on the assets. We have a lot of technical expertise with we are speaking about specification, operational standards, or report, how they can build on this technical expertise to build the regulation they need.
Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Okay.
I see the clock is ticking down, and we'll meet again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Philippa.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.